What is up, everybody? It's Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe Show, the home of epic conversations. Epic conversations. I got to get that out today. Such a nice day outside. The home of epic conversations, and I'm the host of Epic Conversations, 2020 Best Podcast News Award winner, 2018 Innovation Award winner, given out by the Canadian Ethnic Media Association. Also, I host the only online conversation in the world for dads and fathers. It's sponsored by Dove Men Care and Dad Central, Canada's national fatherhood organization. And being part of that team last year, I was able to reach out to over 100,000 dads and fathers around the world. And I don't take that for granted. But all that stuff is by the wayside. Sunday afternoon, March 6th, we are doing what we usually do on Sunday afternoons around 5 p.m. Eastern Time. We do Black Canada Talking. Black Canada Talking is a live online event that provides Black Canadians the opportunity to give their takes and POVs on stories that are of importance to them. And also we showcase Black Canadians. So today, very special conversation. You may or may not know, wherever you're watching this, Black Mental Health Week is March 7th to the 11th. Did you know that? I knew that, but did you? So I am not an expert in Black mental health, but we've got a power team in regards to Black mental health that is joining us today, going to answer some questions and give us some thought process on where Black mental health is right now in Canada and where it needs to go. So I'll bring on one at a time. First up, I want to introduce Lesline McEwan. And Lesline, welcome. And could you introduce yourself to our audience?
Thank you, Dr. Vibe. My name is Lesline McEwan. I'm a registered psychotherapist with the College of Registered Psychotherapists of Ontario. I received my undergrad from Carleton University with a double major in psychology and religion, and my master's in counseling and spirituality from a joint program at St. Paul's and Ottawa universities. I'm in private practice in Ottawa. I provide evidence-based, culturally informed therapy services.
Welcome as always. And Lesline is a big time supporter of the Dr. Vibe Show. So I had to, sort of introduce her first, but it's always good to have her. Always good. And thanks for making the time. Here's a lady that I can't nail her down. She has always got things on the go. Helen Ofoso. Helen, finally we get you. Finally. I don't believe it. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you. You followed me to Burlington. I'm not at home.
Oh my, I'm not stalking. Sorry, I'm not stalking. Digital
okay,
maybe, but not physical.
And the weather's better here than it is at home, so it's all good.
Good. Share yourself with our audience for a few moments, please.
Sure. Well, thank you for inviting me. I'm Helen Ofoso. I studied at McMaster and the University of Windsor. Did a BSc in psychology, and then I did a PhD in industrial and organizational psychology, which is really work and business psychology. I've used that for a long time, but most importantly, in the past almost 10 years in my own practice, offering career coaching, executive coaching, some training, and some HR. And I know it sounds like a lot, but it all ties back to my foundation in psychology. So happy to be here. Wish we had a whole hour to talk just about that interface between work and mental health, because in my mind, it's everything.
Excellent. Well,
especially when our mental health is tied to a workplace, especially a workplace that doesn't feel good and is hurting us, it's a very complicated thing.
Fully agree, and back 100% what you're saying. And hey, we hit the Dr. Vibe Show. We're not one and done. So be careful what you ask for, because there'll be future conversations. But finally, good to have you here. Next up, Dr. Somito Ibezi. Welcome, welcome. There we go.
Hello. Hi, Dr. Vibe. Hi, Helen, and hi, Leslie. My name is Dr. Somito Ibezi. You gave me an extra I.
Oh, sorry.
It's Dr. Somito Ibezi. I am a family physician in Saskatoon. So a bit of background, I did my primary medical qualification in Nigeria at University of Port Harcourt, and I did my residency training in the UK, and I decided to make Saskatoon home. So I work in a family practice in the community, and I also work as a family physician at the Jubei Mental Health Center here at the University Hospital in Saskatoon. And I am
Thank you.
glad to be here.
Well, my apologies for not getting your name right. That was my head, not my heart. Forgive me?
I agree. Yes.
Okay, fantastic. All right. Next up, we have Kadeem Veilleux-Vaillancourt. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. Thanks for the invite. So a bit about myself, born and raised in Ottawa, currently a federal employee, so I work on data regarding socioeconomic health. For the past couple of years, I've been coaching youth sports in the Ottawa area. So I'm really interested in this conversation to see how kind of the things that we touch upon impact the youth that I coach and the kids that I interact with.
Excellent. Thank you for taking the time to be here today. I appreciate it. Next up, Ronald Sharpe from the East.
Thank you for having this important discussion. It was good meeting you today, even just momentarily before this call for your show. It's wonderful to see this distinguished guests and panelists and their perspectives across the country to better understand what is happening with the youth and Black mental health, which cannot be understated in representing the future of Canada. So a little bit about me, I'm a director since 2019 with the Atlantic Equity and Research Alliance located in New Brunswick. And we look at bringing down institutional systemic barriers and began our focus in research and action, because you cannot just have data with it going nowhere. And with a look on justice, education, and mental health is our focuses. And in 2020, I am also a co-founder for a social enterprise called Lavastream Media, which is one of our objectives is designed to bring elevated Black media content developed by Black Canadians and international to make producers in the future and directors to align with AEARA in supporting those students that come out of some of the programs we're doing.
Fantastic. Well, don't be afraid to reach out.
Definitely.
All right, fantastic. And last but not certainly least, Mr. Paul Bailey from the Black Health Alliance. Paul, how we doing?
I'm all right. Good evening, Dr. Vibe, and thank you and Andrea Pierce for organizing this evening's convening. My name is Paul Bailey. I am a strategist, urban planner, and the executive director of the Black Health Alliance. And I've spent the last decade really working to improve outcomes as it relates to Black children, youth, and their families. So spent a lot of time focused on the social service sector, a lot of time focused on gun and violence in the community. Spent a lot of time on mental health and addictions, and now working really to advance my practice in social planning, health equity, and addressing the causes of neighborhood inequality and distress. So I'll leave it there. Thanks.
Good stuff. Pleasure to have you. So what the format we're going to be doing today on the conversation, I have questions for all the panelists. We have a round one and round two. And if anyone in the audience, if you have questions, please put them in the chat if you're watching this live. If we have time at the end, we will fit them in, but comments and questions are invited and wanted. So my first question today goes to Lesline. And Lesline, the NCAC is known for culturally competent Black mental health care. What does that mean, and why is that important?
Thank you, Dr. Vibe. And again, NCAC stands for New Covenant Apostolic Church. Let me tell you a story of a Black male having a mental breakdown. The guidelines for disclosing information to prevent harm includes calling 911. A culturally informed therapist views this from a different lens, understanding the fact that this could have a lethal outcome, considering the racialized Canadians who have died in encounters with the police during wellness checks. In Ontario, you have DeAndre Campbell, Caleb Tabila, and others. So that's why it's culturally informed and competent is important. But first things first, our goal is to help Black people get proper mental health care. Research shows that Black clients are more likely to continue in therapy for more than one session when seeing a Black therapist, and more likely to drop out after one session with a white therapist. We must make therapy a safe and respectful environment for Black people. It's already a very difficult step due to stigma and cultural beliefs, and some have already had negative experiences seeking mental health care. When mental health professionals are culturally informed and competent, clients are more likely to engage and have a positive outcome. Culturally informed is using an equity lens, anti-oppressive lens, respecting the culture, identity of clients, their beliefs, their values, their strengths, their cultural beliefs, their spiritual beliefs, and traditions. The ACB community is very diverse, so we must use an intersectional lens. Culturally informed also means using culturally tailored evidence-based approaches, as most of the Eurocentric therapeutic approaches generally do not work for Black people. And that is what New Covenant Apostolic Church does. We are a Black-led, Black-focused, Black-serving charitable organization, and we have been doing this for 20 plus years. And I don't want to finish here without mentioning, during this Black Mental Health Week, let us not forget women who are penalized by race, gender, and other intersectionalities, and are more heavily impacted by COVID-19 in all areas, and especially by gender-based violence. Thank you.
All right. You're very welcome. Thank you for that opening statement and open response. Next up, Paul, my question for you is, one of the focuses of the Black Health Alliance is the social determinants of health. Can you help our audience understand what is meant by that and its implications for Black community mental health?
I'll give it a try. A lot to try and do in a few minutes, but
I know you can do it.
All right. So the way that I think about the social determinants of health, these are the building blocks for a healthy life, to be healthy and well. I think of things like being secure on your income, having the appropriate house that's safe, enough space for all the family members, etc. Things like being secure around your food, and the elements that create positive development in your early childhood. So that early childhood development experience. Canadian Medical Association says that 50% of our health is made up of those building blocks, other things as well. 10% is environment, 25% is access to care, and 15% is your genetics, our biology. So if we're thinking about how we're going to improve the health and well-being of Black Canadians by a large amount, we're actually not focused just on getting access to care. We're focused on those social determinants of health. And so we know that Black Canadians, particularly those who live in cities and where we have the data to look at some of these, face significant disparities across those things that I just mentioned: income, housing, food, and early childhood development experiences. And what that means then, when you combine those stretches, those barriers to opportunities, those things that don't allow you to be well, it does impact folks' mental health. That combined with some of the pieces that Lesline just talked about, barriers to care. So you think about, geographic barriers to care, or financial barriers to care, or not having access to culturally responsive services. That combines to create a situation where we know that, 60% Black people in Ontario, for example, have 60% increased risk of psychosis. We know that we tend to get to care through the most aversive pathways. So police, ambulance, the hospital emergency room, as opposed to a primary care physician, or being referred to through your teacher, for example. So, I think, the last thing I want to add there is both those social determinants, the experience of trying to get to care and the way that we get to care, all of that at root is rooted in anti-Black racism and the ways that it impacts our health and the barriers to opportunities that it creates. So, perhaps I'll leave it there for now. But the situation that through the work that we're doing at Black Health Alliance that we see is difficult, and so it requires work on the downstream end, like how do we get folks to care now and culturally responsive care, but how are we planning and working together across our cities, across jurisdictions to really take action on those social determinants of health. So I'll leave it there.
That was a good, just off the cuff. That was well done, sir.
Yeah.
That was well done. Very well.
Some practice.
Good stuff. All right. Next up, do I have permission to call you Somito?
Somito.
Sorry, Somito. Again, that's two. I'll get it right next time. Somito. So let me ask, as a medical doctor, can you discuss the impact of on the mental health, on our physical health, on Black populations, especially Black populations in this country?
Oh, thank you, Dr. Vibe. So I think what the WHO said, that there is no health without mental health, is very true. And it's important to understand the unique and unfortunate issue with Black mental health is that this person is dealing with the problems of the mental health. They're dealing with the pervasive mental health stigma, but there is also the added crushing evil of anti-Black racism in addition to everything they're dealing with. So it's there's so many odds stacked against you. You have something extra to worry about. And we've all heard instances of Black people who have gone to a place of refuge, the hospital, to seek help in mental health crisis, and they've been turned away. And they have unfortunately gone ahead to take their own lives. So the effect of mental health on physical health in extreme but not rare cases is unfortunately death. Death can happen. We've seen that. And then we also know that people with mental health problems are at higher risk for chronic physical health problems. And this is due to so many factors. Actually, the WHO report is that life expectancy reduces by 10 to 25 years for people with severe mental health condition. I'm talking about schizophrenia, bipolar, mood disorders. And these deaths are due to chronic physical conditions like cardiovascular problems, respiratory problems, diabetes, infectious diseases. And of course, it is worse for the Black people because most times nobody takes you seriously. And then until it's late, then the whole media thing comes in. Now, I've given a lot of thought to why this is so. And the first thing I would like to mention is the impact of weathering, which is a concept I came across. It's a study that was done by Dr. Geronimus in the States, I think around the 1990s. And they talked about weathering, where basically the repeated trauma of racism, stigmatization, discrimination actually has a physical effect on the human body. So your stress load increases because you're dealing with this every day. And basically your body is aging faster than your peers, people who are not experiencing this racism, this intense, pervasive racism. And we're seeing that you're aging faster. So your body gets tired, your health problems that would come with age start showing much earlier in people who are racialized, and that's Black people. And that is all due to the racism and dealing with mental health problems as well. We know that there's a problem in delay in seeking help because the medication that you run, the motivation is not there as an effect of the mental health problem. So there's delay in seeking and accessing healthcare. And also there's something that I think is important to mention here. Someone who has been off work for a significant amount of time because of mental health problems would be reluctant to take some more time off to go for a headache or for back pain because they already feel they're taking too much time off. And all this contributes to delay in seeking help. Then, of course, there's the issue of symptoms not being believed or taken seriously enough, where it's easy to say, oh, it's all due to your mental health problems, so it is not looked into properly. And often people with mental health problem, and then you add the issue of racism, where people feel, oh, people of a certain race, Black people use drugs, so they do this. So you find that there is less support for Black people to engage in health-seeking behaviors like stopping smoking, cutting down on alcohol, stopping drug use, because if someone is biased enough to think that is what this type of people do, they wouldn't want to spend time to talk to you about getting off this habit because they don't believe you can do it. So the odds are already stacked against you because you're not going to get as much support as the next person for issues like this. And then, of course, the medications that we use to treat mental health problems, they do have their side effects, which need close monitoring. So, but we know that because of racism and not being sure of what you're going to meet when you go to seek health care, people with mental health problems are less likely to go in for their periodic health exams. And this is where you would usually pick up high blood pressure, talk about weight management, cholesterol check your blood sugar. Then you just don't feel right. That's something else. So mental health problems, some of them like depression, there are some physical symptoms that occur with them. There is the fatigue, there's a brain fog, the restlessness, stomach upset. So really, mental health cannot and should not be separated from physical health.
All right. Thank you so much. Great answers coming along, and appreciating the comments from the people who are watching this live. Ronald, it is your time to share with us. My question for you is, can you discuss the impacts you have seen on youth mental health before COVID, and what changes you have seen as of your organization, the Atlantic Equity and Research Alliance?
Oh, yes, thank you. And as I've been listening to the panelists like Lesline and Paul and Dr. Somito mentioning the impacts on youth mental health, was very similar in regards to racism has been coming up, conscious and unconscious biases related to that as well. And that is what's been occurring before the COVID-19 pandemic. So in starting with the context of the impacts that I could see from my area of the world, given what's happening here, data in mental health for youth, and there's children and youth in New Brunswick, like 70% of mental health problems have had their onset, we've noticed, during childhood or adolescence. And that's coming straight from the government of Canada far before the COVID-19 came into place. And then you have like 19% or so language problems that we found in our research that do help and make, because they're not readily available for people. 26 was preferred to manage their own needs because they're having problems with finding maybe where to look and how to go. So an example, if I were to give just a specific example in real time to share, we came across in the age of around 16 to 24, a young university student who was going to university here in our area in film and media studies, and originally from Jamaica, and was literally centered out in taking a position within a call center, making sure that that person specifically was following the rules where everybody else doesn't. Calls being monitored to make sure they're not speaking patois, and they've never had an incident of doing so. Constant belittling of, and to the point of quitting the position, needing it to go and help with school, only to find out after some talking with her that she was one of the top salespeople for the company. And so the intent, like when we were actually developing a program, we thought it would be great to find a student that was working within that field, so for their theory and curriculum, because we wanted to make it so that if somebody wanted to develop and actually go to the education, through the education stream in university, maybe we could have those links. And somebody gave us her name, and she came onto the program, and she was telling us what she had gone through just coming here. And we found her, we were doing a virtual meeting, and she was in Jamaica, and and at the point she had no intent of coming back. So she did come back through our program as we hired her for the work and the abilities that she had to do in the field that she was actually looking for, not a call center, but in the field. And then as we looked, we could recognize this happened to someone who was not born here, didn't go through the system. So imagine what is happening to another kind of levels of racism when you've been ingrained in it from childhood. So that's what the impacts that we were seeing before the COVID-19, or even like children facing serious mental health challenges, impacts, again, mentioned racism, but there's poverty, over-policing, housing, especially hard on Black children. So, but now, nearly 2 years after the disruption that took its toll on, based on what we call safety measures that were put in, what did it do? It reduced in-person interactions with among children, friends, social supports and professionals such as teachers, counselors, pediatricians, and child welfare workers. These were all reduced. So it created an isolation, which made it harder to recognize signs of child abuse, mental health concerns, and other challenges. So you have these, depression has gone up, anxiety has doubled in some cases, suicides was mentioned earlier. These things have shown greater levels, negative emotions, behaviors such as ADHD is on the rise. And in some cases in this area, in 2021, from what we've seen happening in some of North America, it's gone up to, like, suicide attempts for young girls was like 51% and 4% higher for adolescent boys. So when you see the dynamics of this, you can recognize that it is imperative to have these conversations, and for those in federal, provincial, and other governments to recognize the need to focus in this area in a higher regard from just recognition, but actual action. So I hope that
absolutely. Well done. Well done. Fantastic. Kadeem, you are up next. We'd like you to talk to our audience from the youth perspective on how mental health has been affected before and during the recent pandemic.
No, so yeah, thank you for the question. So I guess I'll chime in on the youth perspective on mental health. To be honest, I'm actually at the tail end of youth, but I'll try my best. So I'll kind of touch on the few barriers that I experienced personally and some of the stuff that I'm seeing in regards to youth and mental health care. So I know when I was younger, there wasn't a collective conversation about mental health or even how to access it. That wasn't a thing. In school, you may have heard of the one kid who spoke with a counselor or something like that, but he was labeled the bad kid. And even how you would see the teachers kind of interact with that student, it kind of reaffirmed that if you sought help, that was a bad thing, right? So that kind of played a role throughout my whole life in how I saw mental health care and how I saw mental health care supports as well. And like even to this day, I still struggle with that kind of the competing questions of I have a problem versus I am a problem, and being those two not equaling the same, right? So I know the stigma still persists, but I kind of see signs of it changing. So for me as a young person, like some of the barriers to mental health care experience were definitely access. Some of the questions I would have were, how do you go get help without looking like you need help? Or how do you essentially hide that fact from people? How much did it cost? Because most mental health care is not free a lot of the times, and who's going to pay for it? And as a kid, or even as a university student, no one has money like that. Ultimately, those questions kind of went unanswered. Oddly enough, like during the pandemic, I was kind of like one of the lucky ones. I had time, space to kind of work on myself. So with the virtual freedom, I guess, I kind of tried to seek out professionals to kind of take control of my own mental health care needs and become the pilot in that role. And during the start of the George Floyd protest, there was a lot of communications around seeking out mental health care providers that looked like us, that knew where we were coming from, and that kind of understood our struggles. I kind of cycled through a couple of professionals to find someone, because I didn't want someone who I had to teach. If I was explaining to you my story, I would assume that you have a base knowledge of what I'm talking about, right? And additionally to that, like as a Black male, there's a constant pressure to not appear threatening, not necessarily use words that might trigger alarm, those type of ideas. And I didn't want to have to carry that shield with me into a session. Found that difficult. So I found that some of the individuals I met, there was like definitely an underlying tension that was present, but I couldn't quite figure out what it was. Then those thoughts would come to mind. Are you scared of me? Are you scared of what I'm going to say? Are you afraid of what you're going to say in response to me, because you're trying to kind of sugarcoat what you're saying to fit a quote unquote PC narrative that you think you have to respond to me in, right? And I didn't know it at the time, but what I was actually looking for was someone that was like Black culturally informed. I do see positives though. So I kind of watched the language around Black mental health change. It's become more acceptable to ask friends, like, how's your mental doing? How are you feeling? And not get that pushback. I guess one of the examples I'll bring up, I was coaching a kid and he came up to me and said, hey coach, how's your mental doing? The kid was 13. So I kind of looked at him confused, like, how are you talking to me like this? This is interesting. And then, so I responded to him, I'm all right. And then instantly when I said, I'm all right, I didn't want to portray that narrative that I'm going to be okay, I'm strong, man. Like I really wanted to let him know that I cared. And then right after that, he responds to me, it's okay to not be okay. Then I stopped and I'm like, this kid's 13, right? So this is weird, right? And he goes, it's okay to not be okay. And then confused, waiting for the next response, he goes, I'm okay because I practice self-care, and then runs along. Obviously for him, self-care was probably playing Call of Duty or playing outside with his friends, so it was a little different, but it was interesting to hear someone of that age kind of use the language. More to that, I know that the language is permeating, but I don't know if I believe we need more than language and action in that regard. So yes, they are speaking the language of mental health, but are they applying it? Can they access it? Can they, do they have the tools with which to speak with someone? Do they feel safe? Those type of things. So I know, like, going into the future, I know we're in a time now where the internet and most conversations are occurring right now. Like, we're able to do spaces and sustain those spaces to start and continue conversations about mental health and actually reach the kids where they are. More to that, I think we should start using the technologies and leverage that to actually make mental health care more accessible and lower the barriers that they have. So essentially all that is I hope that we continue the trend and ensure that all solutions related to Black mental health care and specifically for youth are led by those being served. And I really want to break down the silos and make sure that we're all having the conversations within the same place so we're getting a better answer. Because I believe it's better to do nothing than to do something wrong.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks for the real talk from your personal experience. Appreciate it. This section, last question will go to Helen. And Helen, can you speak to the mental health and safety of workplaces, especially for Black workers during these times?
Well, often clients reach out to me for strategic support, to get past a stalled career or to escape a toxic workplace. And for sure, one serious side effect of a stalled career is when people become underemployed, is that the underemployed person starts to doubt their own ability. And their self-confidence takes a real serious hit. And in the end, they may start to feel helpless and give up on their dreams of advancement. Now, on the toxic workplace side, It strikes me as interesting that public health departments inspect countless workplaces before they open and then periodically afterwards. And these inspections are designed to ensure that these environments meet health and safety standards. And meeting or exceeding these standards provides some assurance to employees and to members of the public that these environments aren't harmful. So imagine what would happen if similar audits were happening to ensure that workplace cultures and related behaviors were not creating psychological or mental harm to members of the public, including Black employees. Because we all know that anti-Black racism has been declared a public health crisis, yet very few actions are being taken. And it's hard to quantify the actual costs of things like harassment, bullying, discrimination, especially anti-Black racism, but I believe they are immense. Even pre-COVID, on any given day in Canada, 500,000 Canadian employees were off work on any given day due to a mental health issue. So we have a big problem. We just haven't had leaders who had the guts to do something about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. And there's good having a conversation and there's not so good having the conversation. We could just continue on where we are right now, but because of time, we're going to go into the solutions phase or suggestions phase, but I'm going to put it out there to all my friends on the screen here. We need a part 2. So don't be surprised if we come to you sooner rather than later and maybe have a longer format so we really get deep into this. So don't be surprised if we come reaching out to you, especially Andrea. Andrea will come out to reach out to you. And if you get no from her, you'll give her a no, I'm going to come after you in a good way, by the way. So let's go to round 2. And first off, we're going to start off with Kadeem. Kadeem, what are your recommendations on support Black youth like yourself would like when it comes to the area of mental health?
So one of my recommendations, I guess I would say, to support Black youth mental health care is to ensure that we're all meeting them in terms of terminology and access points where they are. So definitely meeting them where they are, and leveraging technology, including social media, as a part of the solution. In fact, I know Carleton University is working on a Black youth-led culturally informed mental health app that includes social media integrations. So they're working on that app to ensure that the people who need the services get the services. So I think that would be my solution.
Okay, fantastic. Paul, what do you see as the key ways the federal, provincial, and municipal governments can do to address Black mental health care?
I'd say the first thing where I start is actually in the community. I think it's important that we start to take stock of where we're at. Pre-COVID, I guess that's like the marker now, and kind of where we're now in the context of COVID. So we know a lot of young people are living through learning loss, the impacts of COVID on their mental health. And we know that, while kind of the society is moving on beyond COVID, that there are still major risks to our community. So I think it's important for us to take stock. I think the second thing is I'll try and tell a quick story. We've been working at the Black Health Alliance through a project called the Pathways to Care project to get more care to folks on the ground now. And so we've done that in some ways in Ontario, getting the government to invest in mental health services that will land in Windsor, Hamilton, Peel, Toronto, and Ottawa, culturally responsive services for Black youth mental health and addictions. But as you start to peel back the layers, you realize that's only the start. There aren't culturally responsive services in hospitals where folks require more intensive care. And when folks age out of that, there aren't really culturally responsive services available and for access in the community. So there's a lot of work for us to do to think and build and respond to. And then I think as it really gets to what the federal, provincial, and the municipal governments can do, again, I go back and forth between this often, right? Is it, should we be putting a lot of pressure and accountability on governments to, respond to our needs, or should we spend more time in community trying to build our own responses to those needs? And, short answer is I think both. But what I've realized is that government is not coming to save us. Nobody's coming to save us. So it's important that we envision, what those tools, strategies are, and then invite government to participate and to partner with us on those particular, kinds of interventions. So, in wrapping up, I think it's important right now that we get all those levels of government to think about what a targeted and focused recovery plan looks like for Black communities across the country. And then I think, the larger piece of work is actually a national Black mental health, a Black health strategy that does focus on mental health and allows us to, again, work in a fashion where communities are building responses to our needs, and a national framework, a national strategy helps, ensure that we have the collaboration, we have the tools, skills, and the resources necessary to drive those solutions that communities are coming up with for it. So, those would be my two major recommendations: recovery plan, Black national health strategy, and for us to be taking stock.
Thank you, Paul. Dr. Somito, what are your recommendations for how doctors in the medical establishment can support Black mental health care?
Thank you, Dr. Vibe. So this is one problem where I believe that you can throw money at. And I'm talking about government first before I come to. So government can throw money at this problem. It's not every problem that is solved by money, but funding is needed to provide this culturally competent and collaborative care in the hospitals, in the community. So your primary care physicians, the psychologists, the counselors, the social workers, we need to work together, but oftentimes we don't because there's not enough funding to support this. I know the number of times that I have actually had to sort of keep my eye closed and tell somebody, oh, you need counseling. And that is what they need, but I know they can't afford it. And then they say they can't afford it, and then we stop and look at each other. So what next? And then I go to, do you belong to any faith? Is there any faith group? And then we spend so much time online looking for a support group that offer grief counsel, grief support group, whatever support group. And these are people that I know that if they are met at the point of their needs there and then, it will save a lot of problems and a lot of money for the government. So we need to throw money at this earlier on. And the training that healthcare workers are getting needs to be improved on. We need healthcare workers, support workers that reflects the population which they serve. And the training right from the medical schools, the nursing schools, the schools where these people that we hope to be able to go to care for, where they are trained, these important concepts need to be introduced early. It needs to be part of the training curriculum, because the problem with not training people the right way is that the hidden curriculum takes over. If you're not saying that this is what everybody should be doing, we should be able to face our bias, admit that there is anti-Black racism, acknowledge it and work with it, work on how to get rid of it. Then it's going to, if you don't say that, the hidden curriculum takes over and nobody needs to say, treat these people the same way, this particular way, but that's what happens. So back to the training, that needs to, it needs to get better from there. The attitude that someone meets when you go to see your family physician or your nurse practitioner, or even you go to the emergency seeking care, the attitude you meet makes a lot of difference in how you would engage, if you would trust their medication. I find that if I actually take the time to explain to someone that I understand why you're feeling this way, and it's not all, it's not, you're not imagining things, it is real what you're feeling. And then they feel like, okay, we're getting somewhere. But if I just throw a prescription at you, I don't blame you if you don't take it, because you don't know me, you don't trust me, I don't even understand what you're saying. And the prescription, if you tell me you're just giving me this just to get rid of me, there is a lot of sense in what you're saying, even though that's not my intention. So we need to start distinguishing. While we might have the best of intention, the impact is more important. And if you don't, if a healthcare worker, healthcare professional does not admit anti-Black racism and the effect of it, that whatever relationship you were meant to have with that patient, it's not going to be as good as it gets. So our training could be better. We need more people that look like the people they serve to be able to get that trust, to be able to understand where they're coming from. And even if you've never experienced what this person is saying, you're not going to say, oh, you're imagining things or you're exaggerating. So, yeah, money, training.
Okay, thank you. Helen, what are your recommendations regarding how workplaces can support Black mental health care?
Well, I'm a big fan of corporate mentorship and sponsorship and better allyship. And I do see corporate efforts that are being made. For example, lots of these mentorship and sponsorship programs have launched recently. But unfortunately, I'm noticing that they're falling a little short. Most of the time, they're replicating the exact same problems that are already built into these systems. So, you know, for example, everyone knows that if you get into one of these opportunities, they could be life-changing in terms of your career, which means that they're competitive. And sometimes the hurdles you have to jump over and the details involved in getting yourself admitted can be harder than even getting a promotion in a competitive job. So I've seen people literally in tears over these things. And I just think that we're missing the mark on that front. Sometimes I'm also seeing very problematic framing. So people are admitted to these programs. These are high functioning, successful, capable people. Yet somehow the opportunities are being framed as if these Black participants are deficient. They're lacking, they're needing development, they have gaps. It's very negative framing, which I think has a way of getting into people's psyche in a way that's really not helpful. And I also find that sometimes these programs are delivering content or training and support that's actually microaggressive. So it's as though, I shouldn't say it's as though, it's clear to me when I hear about what's happening that sometimes there's really no equity lens, there's no inclusion lens, there's no anti-racism lens, there's no anti-oppression built in. And really, it didn't have to be this way. So I do believe that these rollouts need to be revisited, and maybe these are mostly pilots, so there'll be chances to make improvements over time. And I do believe that part of a more effective approach must including Black participants for input, right? Nothing for us without us. And where possible, we should be taking a lead on providing our own mentorship and our own sponsorship.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Very true. Very true. Next up, we have Richard. What do you see as the elements needed to support Black youth mental health?
Well, I'll respond as Ronald, but I understand.
Sorry,
Richard.
I got it right. Brother, sorry.
Don't worry, it happens when we're at home.
Well,
happens on call.
You got the same smile, so that's what I'm thinking.
You know, yeah, you should see when we're both on the same call how it happens.
Okay.
But in this topic, with this, the seriousness of this topic, when it comes to the federal, provincial, and municipals, it's been said, and I'll say it just in the context of how I see it in my perspective, is that culturally informed peer program services is essential. And what I mean by that is, it's they need to have the grassroots Black organizations at the table. They need to have the funding go to the grassroots. I agree with Paul, I believe, who said that don't expect saving, but I expect accountability. And I believe we all do in our Black communities. So follow the money. Is it going to the intermediaries? And is it getting to those grassroots Black organizations? Well, you're going to need Black organizations with grassroots at the table to find it. So value of Black-focused, Black-led organizations has to be included if you want to see change to mental health. Everyone is looking for that sustainability. I've heard it around the table. For profits, charities, social enterprises require it. But in the other context, it's been said, I think it was Kadeem said, led by those being served as well. It's like the central components, the look that I see in regards to causality and the issues as to the increases in mental health issues is because there's a lack of empowering. So we need to, that's one of the reasons Lavastream came into being was, well, we're not going to wait in one aspect, and if funding does come where it should be to social enterprises, then we'll go for it. But until then, let's go forward. And so we developed what we see is necessary. There was a development for a Black mental health graphic novel style to meet the children where they are looking at their innovative look. And so we're working on funding to get that out there. We did test one of our own distribution products within it in Alberta school district, and it sold out. So we think this would be an excellent opportunity for funding. So these are the things, you build your own, you create yours, and then they come to you, is our goal. So hopefully that's the two contexts that I would leave with this conversation.
Thank you. Lesline, what are your recommendations regarding what's needed to support Black mental health care?
Okay, so for me, the first recommendation would be building capacity, because there is not enough professionals in the Black professionals in the mental health fields. And this is one of the biggest barriers to accessing culturally competent mental health care. The second recommendation I would have is we need to move away from the siloed approach and build ecosystems where community work together, churches, schools, community organizations, workplace, the medical system, to support Black mental health, just like the experts we have here together, working to make an impact. And thirdly, government should intentionally fund Black-led, Black-focused, and Black-mandated organizations. And I say that because NCAC, New Covenant Church, was able to provide free counseling, well, I'd say more free counseling as a result of funding we received and from the Canadian Women's Foundation. And with this, we were able to provide access to people who would not otherwise have access to the mental health care. We were also able to do a bit about capacity building by giving more Black individuals the opportunity to progress toward their credentialing, you know, the hours they need in supervision, in work, whatever. And number three was by building community wealth. We pay them reasonable wages, all with the same dollars. And so from intentional funding, there could be a lot of return. There would be that triple bang for the bucks, as they say.
Thank you so much. I'm going to ask everyone if you'd be kind to give us 5 more minutes. Is that possible with everybody? Okay. Have a question. What can we do at Black community ground level? Paul sort of made a nick into this, saying, what can we do at the Black community level when it comes to Black mental health care? What can we do with our families, with our friends? Anyone who wants to chime in on that, and then we'll just start to close it out. But what can we do at that? Because we talk a lot about government, companies, etc. What can we do at ground level, Black Canadian level, when it comes to Black mental health care?
Well, I could chime in a quick moment. One of the things I noticed was the need for interconnectivity with other organizations at the Black level. Like we were asked to get into an organization with John Howard Society, for example, to start a Black youth outreach program. And they were saying, well, we don't know where the Black organizations are. Can you help us? And so we definitely said, of course we can. And we did. We went into the different cities and we collaborated with different ones from the New Brunswick African Association to different ones in each of the cities. We got together, and when we did that, we started getting stronger with our own individual organizations. That ecosystem that I've heard so many times behind the scenes is now becoming a reality that we develop ourselves. And when you do that, we look making an alliance. There's no telling how powerful you can help and break into that area of mental health when you can see yourselves moving forward in that direction.
Thank you. Anyone else want to chime in?
Just
I
very
have a
quick.
thought.
Jump in. Sorry, go ahead.
I've heard this expression, and I think it rings quite true. Check in on your strong friends. So all the people who seem like they're just fine, it doesn't matter whether they're men or women, in the Black community, those stereotypes about being, a strong Black man or a strong Black woman, often it's true, but beneath that, there's often a lot of pain, a lot of suffering. So I think that's an important message, is to check in on the strong ones. And that's another expression, something about how people almost never pretend to be depressed or anxious. They pretend to be fine. So check in on your strong friends.
That's, and before our next person chimes in, I always say to people, even strong people suffer.
Just really quickly, Dr. Vibe,
Go ahead, Paul.
I'll echo those 2 points. That was actually what I was going to say, but I'm kidding. The third thought that I had was that I think, oftentimes we assume, because we're in the space, that we know what's happening and how every segment of the Black population across our diversity is faring. And so I think it's really, really critical that we create more spaces, when we're thinking about that ecosystem, when we're thinking about giving people the tools, create more spaces to really, really listen to what people are saying and what people, raise as both the challenges and the solutions to their situations. I think it's there that we can start to, in that context of that ecosystem, really start to knit and build together the solutions. And then, it is on government. Definitely, there's a piece around accountability, but I think we can mobilize the skills, tools, and resources to make sure that those solutions get the supports they need. So I think my addition would be just, creating those spaces to just really pay attention, to really listen to what young people or seniors or, folks from the continent, et cetera, are facing.
Thank you, Paul. Anyone else want to add on?
Yeah, I'd like to say, Dr. Vibe, so one thing we have to be conscious of and try to watch our language, it's mental health is not mental illness. And a lot of times people run for the hills when they hear mental health because their perception is, oh, okay, it's something negative, right? And we have to learn in our families and our community to recognize what, mental health issues may look like, because the mental health is on a continuum, and it could be I'm fine, or maybe I'm not feeling well, and it just goes along. We have to be careful about that and be mindful that we check on each other. What does mental health look like? It doesn't look the same across the board, because in different populations it looks different. Somebody might all of a sudden be very angry, irritable, and you can understand what's going on with that person. In our people, that could be a sign of depression or anxiety. So there are the different faces, and it's being able to recognize changes in behavior, what's going on, and be, inquiring and supportive.
Anyone else before? And unfortunately, we have some questions here, but we won't have enough time. Anyone else from the panel want to add on? Which just means we definitely now need to do a part 2.
I'd like to say something. So as a family doctor, during my training, I was told that part of my job is to be nosy. You have to be a nosy person to be a good family doctor, because you need to ask questions. So, and that extends now to my family and friends, unfortunately. But part of my being nosy is whenever I meet someone, I always ask, so do you have a family doctor? And most people are like, oh no, I used to have one. And you know how when you see a good deal somewhere, there's deal going on at Superstore, and you quickly text your friend to say, oh, there's some good deal to be had there. That's the same way I text people to say, oh, there's this doctor taking patients, so you need to go and register. Because I think it's important for everyone to have a foot in the door by getting a family doctor. So I think in our family, within our friends, when we're catching up and eating nice food and talking about our day, it should be part of our conversation. Do you have a family doctor? Go get a family doctor. And if you hear about a family doctor, put that information in your WhatsApp group. Say, everybody go register. There's a family doctor here taking patients. So that's my input here.
Thank you. Anybody else? We're good? All right. I would be remiss by, first of all, thanking you for all taking the time. And we definitely have to part 2. And I'm also thinking 3 or 4, but that's a whole other conversation. I'd like each person 30 seconds, and I'll call you in order on if you're comfortable, if anyone would like to get in touch with any of you. So first off, Lesline, are you comfortable sharing your contact information?
Sure. Just LeslineMcEwan.com. That's the easiest. Okay.
Helen?
Yeah, I'm always sharing resources on my website, on my blog. I've got, over 200 articles that help people with career management, career development, leadership. So it's ioadvisory.com, and all my contact information is there.
Thank you so much. Dr. Somito?
I think the easiest and best way to reach me would be on LinkedIn. So it's Somito Ibezi. It's easy to search on LinkedIn.
Thank you so much. Next up, Ronald.
My 2 hats, you can reach me, is usually on the internet, the websites, AEARA.org, AEARA.org, or if you're interested in the media content side, there's Lavastream Media, all one word.com.
Thank you. Kadeem.
Yeah, the best way to connect with me is on LinkedIn, just Kadeem Veilleux-Vaillancourt, if you'd like.
Thank you. And Paul.
But the website of the Black Health Alliance is www.blackhealthalliance.ca, and our general email is info@blackhealthalliance.ca.
Well, I'd like to thank each one of you for what you have done, what you are doing, and what you will be doing going forward. Thank you so much for taking the time. And yes, part 2, I see like ... like ongoing conversation. We'll see if we can make that happen. Also want to say a big thanks to Andrea Pierce, who made this happen. She made this happen. And she reminded me 2 years ago, we had this conversation, and she said, Dr. Vibe, you were the first person to host something like this nationally. I go, really? I don't know. But for the people, we did, because of time, we did not get to your questions. But please, 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 those who know me, you know how to get in contact with me. We will be diligent to make this. I think it needs to be a regular conversation. It has to be a regular conversation because it's not going away. My name is Dr. Vibe, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe Show, the home of Epic Conversations, and I'm the host of Epic Conversations, 2020 Best Podcast News Award winner, 2018 Innovation Award winner, given out by the Canadian Ethnic Media Association. Also, host the only online conversation in the world for dads and fathers. It's co-sponsored by Dove Men Care and also Dads Central. Like to say a thank you for everyone who watches live or will be watching it on the replay or listening to it on the replay. And I always close out with this. Live your life as a dream. If you can dream it, you can make it. Sometimes you have to get smaller to get stronger. Block assumptions, then aim bigger, aim better, aim higher, aim wider. Love, faith, and respect. Remember to give yourselves grace, and don't just manage your time, Manage your energy. And thanks to BIA Media for a great production today. God bless. Peace to you all. Keep the faith and walk good.